So I have a couple of questions. The first one is, what kind of model you have to link this policy reform in the late 19th century, 20th century to development today? Because if I was taking a naive model of, if I believe the cost theory, I would say if you look at these communities, at this land, the geographical, the economic activity of in those areas today, they should be better off. So I don't know what exactly you have in mind in terms of the model that linking those two variables. And the second comment I have is about the heterogeneity. Because when you mentioned heterogeneity, the first thing that came to my mind was kind of the heterogeneity of these Indian agents, the heterogeneity of land. In the sense that I can expect everything the little I read about this also is that there were some lands, prime agricultural land, and the treatment that received through this expropriation of this particular policy was different. So that was my first concern, was not about so I don't know if you can think about that as well, in terms of addressing that particular bit of heterogeneity. I'm not completely sure it would be addressed by these two videos.
Yeah, I mean, I think some of why we've thought about sort of these agro-suitability measures and understanding sort of the resource environment is to try to account for some of the sort of quality differences that we see, because certainly that sort of matters, right? And I think some of the sort of reservation fixed effects, I think, will help us in terms of sort of land quality, ideally sort of being perceived as constant through the period, so that the sort of reservation itself isn't changing over time, but yet we're sort of identifying it from sort of variation within reservation. So I think, I think we need to sort of think a little bit more about sort of how the process works and with that.
So I think Nick and Terry have some work on, with the DOSEC there's an extensive and an intensive margin, and the extensive margin is, do you get treated at all? There's plenty of reservations who don't get treated with the DOSEC. And if I read your research right, it seems to be all about resource endowments. So if you're sitting on, like near an oil field, near some potential mining activity, on some good land, you're more likely to get treated with the DOSEC because they want you to get out of there. And so that might just be, if that's like just totally dominating whatever intensive margin variation we're trying to tease out of this exogenous turnover in Indian agents, we might just be tinkering at the margin to a degree where we're just not getting much leverage out of that. So if we're left with only the extensive margin, then potentially we can still focus on the off-reservation populations, where we can say they're at least separate from whatever revenue streams are occurring on the reservation, and we just say, you were exogenously kicked out, you plausibly exogenously moved to the city, and now we look at what that does to you as you're developed over generations as an urban Indian. Urban Indians are like a big deal in many US cities, or used to be. But we're hoping we're getting enough out of the intensive margin that we can just make comparisons within similarly treated reservations, and then just somewhere exogenously treated with a trigger-happy Indian agents, and others were not.
I'm trying to figure out how you handle ceiling effects and giving away the land, because you can, when you look at the first period, he was able to give away lots, and then he moves to another one, and he either got tired or there just wasn't enough to give away because the previous guy had given it all away. So how do you deal with that in the model?
In the empirical model?
Yeah.
Just the mechanics of measuring, just like
how much is left? Like how much work does he have to do? Because you're putting a lot of stress on the agent.
Yeah.
But if they move, there's time moving as well, and land is being given away, I guess, before and after.
Yeah, I guess the hope would be that as you're tracing an agent's career, you're able to control for where in the land allotment process is each reservation where you're observing them, and then whatever is residual as the agent fixed effect is what you would use as your instrument. So it sounds like something that you need to control for, but I think our thinking is simply that we think we can control for it. So in other words, if you're at a reservation, if you're observing one agent at a reservation where most of the land is gone, that's a measurable thing.
Okay.
That's not a very specific answer, but it sounds controllable.
Okay. I think Maggie and Dominic need a Oh, I didn't raise it.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Did you?
Yeah, so
I wanted to get in, but I don't think I was next.
So I was just curious, I was just trying to understand the empirical specification. Is the treatment the number of allotted acres by reservation by year, and then you're looking at contemporaneous outcomes? Is that kind of the idea?
So I think I put sort of DAWs up there sort of simply just almost more as a placeholder for that. But
Okay.
certainly sort of that, how you charted it, we could use that to sort of try to understand, is it sort of the flow of land that happens in a particular.
Okay.
But that's a good point, though. The way we're thinking about it right now is there's a contemporaneous empirical part that's more like a panel type
Right.
thing, where a new agent comes in. If that's a trigger-happy agent, there's a rush of land allotment.
Mhm.
But really, you're looking at this thing with a 25-year-old lag, because that's when you're actually getting the land in fee simple.
Right.
And then can we see something in the 1900, 1910 data? And then there's the long-run stuff, where we really just have the final stock.
Mhm.
And we could use the instrument in similar ways, but we'd have just the cross-sectional total cumulative
Mhm.
of how much land was being dossed away.
Okay, because one thing I was going to say, especially with thinking about the fact that these agents move around, is Carlson has this paper that sort of argues that reservations with better sort of agricultural endowments got allotted first. And so you might think that that would affect this sort of history of what agents had done. If they were initially on reservations that sort of have rich agricultural potential, they might behave differently than when they end up on reservations that don't. And so I guess just more broadly, it seems like the extensive margin of how, like the resource characteristics that determine the probability of allotment are going to interact with the agent characteristics in terms of how aggressive they are.
Yeah, so I think it's a little bit similar to Ravi's point.
Yeah.
You would be controlling for this as you're observing the allotment going on in the reservation you're focusing on, but then your instrument is the fixed effect of the agent when they're elsewhere, and there also you would be controlling for if elsewhere they were on a reservation with particularly good land, then that would have been an incentive to allot it out fast.
Right.
Also in theory, I mean in principle, we just think we can control for that. Yeah, we hope.
I'm glad you guys are working on the project. I like it. I think I'll look forward to following it. It seems like there's two really important potential effects of the Dawes Act. One is its long-run impacts on the land, on the resources, and how knotted up it is, and how well it can be used. And then the second, which I think is almost independent, is the effect on the people who had land that was allotted and sold it. And if you can follow them over time, I think you'd be the first to do that. Just a narrow comment on this agent thing. Are you worried that the aggressive agents, their reputation is known and they're just being sent to the places that need to be allotted next? So it's not that, it's the agent's fixed effect is just representing the administrative choice of where to allot next, and they're sending the can-do agents to the different places.
So we have, yeah, so certainly we've thought a little bit about, say, hey, are these agents just being sort of distributed in order to take advantage of their beliefs, right? We'd read, I think Christian had read at one point, sort of that the movement was sort of more random than that, which I think is really useful.
So the problem is we're getting the agents' perspectives. So we got some accounts where agents are talking about they're heartbroken that they're being taken away from the communities they had sort of grown some roots in, and they're being, from their perspective, being randomly put elsewhere. Whether they were randomly put elsewhere from the agency's perspective, so it's not like we found like a random allocation mechanism somewhere buried in the documents. It's we found these narrative accounts from the agents which seem to say, I have no idea why I'm now being sent over there. But we didn't find like an explicit like policy statement from the BIA about how they do this.
It's like the can-do missionary that gets sent to places that need to be
It's certainly
reformed.
possible. Yeah.
So me, I'm good at Jerry, Donna, possibly. So you ought to be able to measure that. So if the agent fixed effect, agent historical fixed effect is correlated with land characteristics, then that placement might be a dodging site, kind of wondering about the same thing, but you should be able to speak to that. I was more interested in the treated, non-treated thing, you know, because this is all about the, you know, you got this continuous treatment. I think, like it's, yeah, okay. Could you use, I mean, because you got such a long period of time, could you use variation in the world price of the commodity that is, you know, producible in the land that's there, and use that to instrument treatment or future treatment, something like that. I mean, it just seems like if
Yeah.
you're arguing that the government dawses them up because there's lots of money being made, then you can exploit variation in those prices.
Yeah, and I think there's this older paper by Carlson that he actually looks at sort of something about these kind of looking at these agricultural prices and sort of price volatility and how this price volatility and you know, and we could certainly try, we haven't talked about it, but we could certainly try to bring in something.
And Nick, your stuff with Terry, is that time varying or just cross-sectional?
We do some things with world prices, but to be honest, I can't remember exactly what.
So we're not the first to kind of do this
price
at macro level.
Coal, price of wheat, corn.
Yeah, yeah, but yeah.
I'm just kind of interested in the question of whether or not, you know, how, whether you ask the right question in a sense. Because I think, you know, what happens if you have this kind of massive loss of land is that you get lots of things going on at the same time. You have communities losing their land base, which has a cultural shock, which is a cultural shock. Then you have the economic shock. Then you have individuals being allocated land, and you have this, you know, individual economic shock. So you got all these different. Are you thinking about your results then as the aggregate? You're looking at the aggregate of all these events together, or how do you think about whatever you eventually measure? Is that all of these effects kind of combined? How do you want us to think about this?
I think
Is that a stupid question?
No. I think that's.
It's just, it seems there's so many things that are going on at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, I think to
And-
the degree that we can try to unpack some specifics there, sort of using, you know, and thinking through a little bit of sort of the heterogeneity of sort of what we can observe in our data, we may be able to comment on sort of individual parts, but I think we may end up being a little bit more sort of bundled.
I mean, how do you
Yeah.
want to differentiate any of this out, right? I mean, the culture, for instance, the social kind of cultural shock of losing a huge part of the reservation land, of the land base could be massive in
Right.
terms of how repercussions through the institutions, through informal kind of relations among the community members, everything and so you're not gonna
Everything.
ever be able to disentangle that,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah,
it's
I
sort
mean,
of a,
there's like the kind of worst case scenario, which is you can't use this to explain anything, and the only thing we're going to contribute is we're going to explain the DOS act.
yeah, that's right.
We're going
Okay,
to
so
explain
that's
how it
kind of, I
panned
guess
out.
that's
Yeah.
my,
So
that's my biggest concern, is
That's
that
kind of
you
like
don't
the lower bars.
you
We're
can't
just going
really
to do the
speak to
economics
anything
of
other
how
than
this was done.
actually the DAWS Act,
Yeah,
right?
it's possible.
Yeah.
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 I think
Give
that's
Jared last word.
our worst case.
Okay, it follows up on that, just a sentence that I think when it comes to the time when you want to analyze the impact of all of this, you may want to look at recent work on the intergenerational impact of environmental dispossession, because I think that's what previous speakers also going towards. These have impacts culturally and over time, intergenerationally, when you separate people from the land, when the land is part of the culture of and traditions of those peoples. So the environmental dispossession literature would be helpful to you, I think that.
That's very good.
Okay, thanks, guys. Let's get